All right, hopefully I'm recording now. So this is February 25th, and I've decided that I want to do a little update. The last time I did a presentation of the work that I'm doing towards my book on Indian history was about a month ago. Made a few updates since then. So um, if you're wondering why I'm wearing the warm clothing and the winter scene in the background, it's winter. The one in the background, by the way, is Big Sky, Montana. Although I'm here in Florida, we did have a little bit of cool weather recently. Got down to the 30s at night and the 50s during the day, which is cold for us and uh, cold enough. All right, so let me share out my screen and should be sharing everything. I'm going to bring up my presentation here. So, all right. Like I said, last time I showed this was about a month ago, and I made a few updates since then. So, first thing I want to mention is right here. Made some progress with the museum in Pune, India. We sponsored a new front entrance, which is almost complete. It's all hand carved stone in Rajasthan and then polished and everything like that. So it just makes a nice entrance for the museum. We had previously, uh, spent some money on the landscaping and pavement for the whole place, paver stones, and then of course, in addition to that of course, the content, all my history information, which is in one of the pavilions. There's like 19 or 20 pavilions. Let's see. So I think during my presentations in the past, I've talked about because of the geography, India is unique in the ancient world. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia or even China, it wasn't as constrained by geography. It's very fertile and very large. So there were multiple nodes or sources of the Indian civilization centers. And I think before I talked about in the southern part of India. But I do also want to mention that within the main Sapta Sindhu region or land of seven rivers, people are not familiar with some of the other sites, right? The other ancient cities. So in addition to, let me see if I can open this up a little bit. In addition to Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, there's also a lot of other cities like Raki Garhi and Lothal. And so this slide is just showing some of the work that's been done recently in Birana, which goes back to about 8000 BC, so much older than people had thought. And it's very good work. By the way, two different methods that are used for carbon dating. One is carbon 14, but the other one is, I believe it's called OSL, optical stimulated luminescence, which some feel is a more accurate method. But in any event, multiple methods people have used to carbon date or to date the cities. So there's no real doubt about their age. Let's see. Okay, another update to what I've done in the last month or two is that this excellent decipherment of the Indus script by Yajnadevam, or I guess he goes by that's his nickname. I guess it's Bharat Rao. This excellent decipherment was done, and I had mentioned if you look at the bottom of the slide, I said it's a mathematical proof. It's rock solid. There's no need for an India Rosetta Stone, with the assumption that there was no India Rosetta Stone. But as fate would have it, it looks like there's one or more uh, findings in India that look like they could be Rosetta Stones or kind of mini Rosetta Stones. This is an example of one. It contains um, Indus script and then also some other type of uh, script that is used later on. In fact, let's see. It also contains some Brahmi script later on. So we're finding some things that have combination of script on them, so it helps us see that together and see the transition, the different phases of civilization. So to say that there was no Rosetta Stone, not quite. It looks like now there definitely may have been. This is one thing I wanted to mention. Sometimes when people talk about Indian history and they say, I see different opinions on Indian history. I don't know what to believe. I think there's a lot of noise or FUD out there. So if you look at the two ends of this, you can think of that as both are different types of extremism. On the left-hand side is negationism, right? People keep bringing up the fictitious Aryan invasion or Aryan migration, or they kind of whitewash the Islamic period or whitewash the European period. Um, that's not an accurate portrayal of history. And a lot of the people behind that they might have other agendas. They might be leftist, they might be Marxist, communist, socialist. I would just call that one extreme. The other extreme on the right-hand side here is fantasy. This is where people essentially are kind of misinterpreting some of the ancient Indian literature related to yugas or ages or epics. And there's a big difference between, the epics of man versus the epics of planet Earth versus the epics or eons or yugas of the universe. And people conflate those together and then, provide dates for Indian history that are just too far. The chronology is too far back. And very often they'll also have kind of a myopic or self-centered thought process where everything in the world comes from ancient India. No other civilization provided anything, and that it's simply not true. Different people around the world at different points in history have contributed to the development of human beings overall. The middle path is I'd like to think I'm following that. Of course, I'm probably not doing a perfect job of it, but let's look at the evidence. Let's apply some common sense logic. It appears that people from India had a huge population. Some people migrated out. That's what we call the out of India theory. When those people left, they took some of their culture, some of their religion, some of their language with them. The last point I want to mention in the middle path is really unknowns. There are still some unknowns, and we always have to have humility and say, hey, if we don't know something we don't know, let's keep looking, let's keep thinking, and hopefully we'll figure it out. One thing I do want to mention, another update in the past. Yeah, in the past month or so, another good update is I have somebody who has volunteered to help me. They have a bit of a technical background, and they're helping me with my royal chronology timeline itself, which is a spreadsheet, and some, I don't want to say errors, but some bugs have entered into it from Microsoft Excel over the years. And so they're helping kind of clean that up and maybe improve it. So that's a big plus. Okay, I want to go now to the slides at the end and mention a few things. So let's see, I'm going to go way down here. Okay. So I do, although the work is on the history of India, I do want people to think about thinking. Because very often you'll look out there on questionable sources like Wikipedia or just do general Google searches and it'll come up with stuff which is just literally factually incorrect. But it may be conventional wisdom that's been accepted for the last 100+ years. We have to really stop and ask ourselves, is what I'm reading aligned with what I've seen with my two eyes if I visited India, or does it match with common sense? Sometimes it's not just what people are saying, but are they leaving something out? You can understand a lot by what's being omitted versus what's being mentioned, because nothing's done by accident. People will put things in and leave things out very intentionally. There's a purpose, and very often the purpose is to guide you in a certain direction and divert you from another direction, which might be closer to the truth. This is great. They taught primates sign language since the 1960s. So it's been a long time now, right? 50, 60 years plus. But the one thing the apes have never done in all that time is ask a question. They were able to learn, but they don't have the thinking about thinking. This is called metacognition, right? Thinking about thinking. So I think all of us need to keep this in mind, right? One of the most important things we do as humans is to think and to ask questions and to be curious. So along those lines, sometimes I like to focus on the work I do is not so much providing answers or all the answers, but really asking some questions, some good questions. So here's a few. Did our ancestors, people in India, did they have a healthy curiosity about their own history? So in other words, if I'm living in India in 1800 BC, did I have a healthy curiosity about what happened a few thousand years before me? And put that in context. Did we develop our own detailed chronology? Not a sloppy, gap-filled rough estimate, but an actual proper professional chronology. Do we have information about where ancient people live? We know all of these different names of people that are mentioned in the Vedas and Upanishads and later literature, the epics, do we know exactly where they lived, the names of those cities, the exact geographic location of those cities? Do we have stories of people traveling from one city to another city? And did they name the cities? And did they name the people in the city or the rule of the city and exact direction they were going and the distance that they were traveling? Details like that can really help us develop a map. So that leads to the question of, do we have ancient maps of Bharat? Do we have maps of the entire world from Bharat's perspective? And I mean maps that are detailed, not just pie in the sky, rough couple blobs for continents. I mean details like mapping. Obviously, people in India had fantastic ships. Did they go out and explore uh, just for the sake of exploration, right? I'm a huge fan of science fiction. And if we look at Star Trek, the whole premise for the show was, or the movies is exploring or exploration for the purpose of exploration. It's not necessarily to conquer, it's not necessarily to even influence. It's just a natural curiosity to see what's out there. And I think as humans, we should all have that. And I feel like if we have no curiosity, we're not fully human. Um, Another question is, why have the wars in Indian and Bharatiya history been defensive? Why didn't we ever go out to fight offensively? Especially after kingdoms attacked us. So you might say, well, we're very peaceful, we don't want to hurt others. But if somebody comes and hurts you, not only do you have to defend yourself, but you have to say, hey, who are these people? Where did they come from? Why did they do what we do? Why don't we go and learn more about them and their homeland and their territory? And perhaps it's necessary to do an offensive battle to protect ourselves, right? A lot of times people will say the best defense is a good offense. Why wasn't that philosophy used? I'm just curious, asking question. Another question down there, why didn't we organize Sanatan Dharma, what we today call Hinduism, real name Sanatan Dharma, or I guess you could translate as the eternal natural way. Why didn't we organize that into a system and then spread that around the world? People will say, well, they were just busy within India. Why? Why did they stop there? Why didn't they go elsewhere? Why didn't they have a curiosity about elsewhere? I'm just asking these questions. Do we have agency as a people? Do we see things, interpret it our way, teach other people our way? Do we have our opinion and our thoughts? Or do we just sit on our hands and wait for others to come and approach us and give us their interpretation? And then we are reacting, we're reactionary versus being proactive. All right, this basic question we should all ask. Do we innovate? Do we invent? Or do we follow? Right? There's a big difference between, hey, I work at XYZ multinational corporation. Wonderful. But who out there is creating the new multinational corporation based on new ideas and new branding and global leadership? Are we looking for others to accept us, or do we lead and challenge others to follow us? It's a different thought process and something I don't see much of. Maybe it's out there, that's good. But looking at the past in Indian history, I don't see much of that. And I'm just curious why that is. So let's see. Uh, Along the lines of thinking is maybe update a little bit of terminology. We hear Indus Valley or Harappan civilization as the term for the civilization, but actually there were, once again, 3 points of light, three civilizations. But the primary one you can think of as SSC, Saptasindhu. And by the way, that's the exact word that was used in the Rig Veda. That's what we call ourselves, Saptasindhu. Likewise, we didn't use the word Hindu or Hinduism. These are foreign words. We use dharma. And you can conjugate dharma, right? You can say uh, the spiritual system or religion is called Sanatan Dharma, and a follower is dharmin or dharmic. We can actually use those words. We don't have to use the word Hindu just because somebody else used it. Likewise, it's not Hindustan, it's Bharat. I do see that being used more and more. Good sign. It's not Indus River, it's Sindhu River, and that's where you get the province Sindh also. They're not gods, they're deities. Big difference, right? Idol, incorrect term. Correct term would be icon or murti, which actually translates also to statue potentially. Temple or shrine, not the best words. Mandir, devale might be better terms. Um, on the ethnic sense, we use the word Caucasian, which is really based off of the Caucasian Mountains, Caucasus Mountains, and the concept of Aryans coming from the Caucasus Mountains in southern Russia or Georgia, and then those people traveling out in both directions. We now know that's completely false. It did not happen. In fact, all the evidence shows people from northern and northwestern India slowly migrated out, and they took with them their culture, their language, their religious concepts, and that spread. And we can even see the morphing of the language and the ideas over thousands of years as they spread outwards. So really, this race that we call a Caucasian, I think we should call it Indic, right? Like you have the Negro race from Africa, the Mongoloid race from East Asia, what they used to call Oriental, and this look of features and straight hair, this would be, I think, more accurately called Indic, not Caucasian. So I think we should stop feeding into the Caucasus Mountain Aryan lie and just say there's Indic race, and this is where the Arya people and Arya culture come from. That would be more technically correct. And then the last thing is it's not a 5,000-year-old civilization, it's 10,000. At least 10, could be slightly longer than that. Last thing I want to say is what's the direction of all my work? So yes, I'm starting with putting together a book on Indian history, which is based off primarily my royal chronology and also the idea of asking some questions. But this is going in a direction. So the first thing after this would be putting together the three epics, not two, three epics in order and writing historical novels because it's nice to tell a story. And these are be historical. So there's not going to be fantasy or anthropomorphic beings or characters in there. This is just going to be people and what we have the historical evidence for. Dasharajnya, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. Um, I'm not sure if I'm going to do something related to yoga, the history of yoga in the middle, but then I think the next step is to really delve into the spiritual side, and that's where I'm going to put together a book called Galactic Dharma. We are moving to a multi-planetary civilization, so it doesn't make sense to have religions which are based on Earth or even a small portion of Earth geographically and a small slice of history. It's a very outdated and frankly kind of stupid idea. And I think that's why a lot of people in the world are kind of anti-religion because it hasn't caught up with the reality. So having a dharma that is advanced and that is the perspective of the universe or the multiverse, I think makes more sense. And then that would lead eventually to an updated holy book, which would not be a fixed canon. It would be dynamic. It would update on a regular basis. And I propose that basis could be the Mahakumbha Mela. So every 12 years, when the planets aligned within this solar system, you could have an updating of that book, and then maybe a sampradaya would evolve around that. So those are some of the things I'm doing in the last month or two. I just wanted to make a quick update. And then you could go back and look at my other videos on my YouTube channel and see the more complete soup to nuts presentation.